On Thanksgiving Eve, 1971, a man in a dark business suit walked into Portland International Airport. He bought a $20 one-way ticket to Seattle using the alias Dan Cooper. He was in his mid-40s, wore a thin black clip-on tie, and blended perfectly into the busy holiday commuter crowd. Once seated in row 18, he ordered a bourbon and 7-Up, paid his tab, and casually handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Assuming it was a phone number, she dropped it in her purse until Cooper leaned in and told her she had better look at it. The note was printed in neat, capitalized letters. It read, "I have a bomb in my briefcase." To prove it, Cooper opened his attaché to reveal a large battery wired to 8 red cylinders. He then laid out his demands: $200,000 in negotiable American currency and exactly 4 parachutes. Asking for 4 parachutes, 2 primary back chutes, and 2 emergency chest reserves was a calculated move. By requesting gear for more than one person, Cooper implied he might force a hostage to jump with him. This guaranteed the authorities on the ground would supply fully functional equipment. Throughout the entire ordeal, Cooper never raised his voice. He was polite, offered to pay for his drinks, and even chatted about the local terrain out the window. He was orchestrating a federal hostage crisis with the disposition of a man reading a newspaper. When Flight 305 hit the tarmac in Seattle, the airline delivered a 19-pound bag of $20 bills and the 4 parachutes. True to his word, Cooper let all 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants disembark safely while the plane was refueled. He kept the cockpit crew and 1 flight attendant on board, issuing a highly specific flight plan. They were to head southeast toward Mexico City, but they had to fly below 10,000 feet. The landing gear had to stay deployed, and the wing flaps needed to be lowered to 15 degrees, forcing the plane to fly as slowly as possible without stalling. Cooper ordered the last flight attendant into the cockpit and locked them in. A few minutes past 8 o'clock, a warning light flashed on the pilot's instrument panel. The cabin pressure dropped violently. Cooper had opened the aft exit door and deployed the plane's built-in rear staircase. Somewhere over the Cascade Mountains, Cooper stepped off the stairs into a pitch-black, freezing rainstorm and 196-mile-per-hour winds. He fell into the remote, heavily wooded wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, wearing nothing but a business suit and loafers. The conditions were so brutal that investigators immediately questioned whether a human body could survive the impact, let alone the freezing temperatures on the ground. The next morning, military and local authorities launched an extensive search operation, combing through thousands of square miles of dense forest. They looked for a parachute canopy, the money, or a body. They found absolutely nothing. The FBI opened an active case file, codenamed NORJAK, and cataloged what little evidence remained: 66 latent fingerprints, 2 unused parachutes, and a black clip-on tie. Using detailed interviews from the flight crew, artists developed a composite sketch of the suspect. They described him as an olive-skinned man with neat, dark hair, who spoke with no discernible regional accent. Despite possessing physical evidence, fingerprints, and a clear physical description, investigators hit a wall. None of these markers produced a hit in any federal database, leaving the FBI with a suspect who had no prior criminal record. Over 4 decades, the NORJAK file swelled into a 66-volume labyrinth. Agents pursued tips across 40 countries, interviewing over 1,000 suspects. They vetted confessions and chased obscure leads, but every promising thread unraveled upon closer inspection. Then there was Richard Floyd McCoy, Jr. Just 4 months after Cooper vanished, McCoy pulled off an almost identical crime. He boarded a Boeing 727, demanded a massive ransom and parachutes, and jumped out of the rear air stairs in Utah. But the FBI ruled him out. McCoy was 29 years old, nearly 2 decades younger than the witnesses' descriptions of Cooper. Furthermore, McCoy had prominent ears and a distinct Southern accent with a lisp, none of which matched the flight crew's descriptions. For a generation of investigators, the case was a maddening cycle of promising leads that inevitably ended without a single piece of corroborating evidence. 9 years passed without a single trace. Then, in February 1980, an 8-year-old boy was smoothing sand to build a campfire along the Columbia River. He unearthed 3 crumbling bundles of $20 bills buried just below the surface. The bundles totaled $5,800. The FBI checked the serial numbers against their microfiche records and confirmed a direct match. It remains the only portion of the $200,000 ransom ever recovered. This map shows the FBI's calculated flight path and the suspected drop zone, but the money was found here, at a beach called Tina Bar. That location is significantly upstream from where Cooper could have possibly landed. The discovery did not narrow the search. Because Tina Bar is upstream from the suspected drop zone, the find directly challenged the accuracy of the FBI's original flight path and radar data. The Tina Bar discovery fueled decades of renewed public interest. Amateur investigators formulated elaborate theories involving dredging operations and river currents, but none of them produced a definitive lead on the hijacker's identity. Finally, on July 11, 2016, the FBI announced the official suspension of the NORJAK investigation, stating that federal resources needed to be redirected toward more modern security threats. The remaining $194,000 has never surfaced in circulation. The man who extorted a fortune and jumped into the freezing rain remains the only unidentified, uncaptured skyjacker in American history.